Get ready to watch one of the best chess videos you've ever seen in your life. I'm going to show you an opening or gambit that's going to change the way you see chess. It's an extremely popular gambit, and across the entire YouTube platform, I haven't seen a single video about it. The only thing I regret is not bringing this video to the channel sooner. But don't worry, I've prepared it well, and after you all watch it, you're going to want to go out and play it. Let me introduce you to the Dutch Gambit. It's a very solid gambit, extremely effective, and the best part is that you'll be able to play it in the vast majority of your games. Why? Because you're going to play it in the most played opening in the history of chess. Knight to f3 attacking the pawn, knight to c6 defending, and bishop to c4. See it? This is the Italian opening. Here, they might reply with knight to f6 or bishop to c5. And honestly, it doesn't matter at all what they play because we're going to castle, all right? For example, let's say they play bishop to c5 first, we castle, and the most common thing, right, is that now they play knight to f6. If they develop the knight first, logically now they develop the bishop. All right, when we reach this very typical position, which I'm sure all of you have reached, in a significant number of your future chess games, you are frequently going to find yourself playing the fearsome Dutch Gambit. It would be like an exceptionally powerful and highly improved variation of the classic Scotch Gambit. And let me explain why. First of all, you should know that here the only correct move is to take this pawn with the bishop. Right, nobody would think of taking this pawn with the bishop. Whenever I've played it, they always capture it with the pawn. I'm going to explain how to play it, whether they capture with the pawn, which I'm telling you right now is not a good move, but it's what they'll always do, or if they capture with the bishop, which is the correct way to continue, and I'll show you how to play against that too. Why is this gambit so good, chess teacher? Well, get ready, because it hides a series of totally wicked moves that will let you win the game, often in just a few moves. The first idea behind diverting this pawn from is to free up the advance of our king's pawn to e5. So we're already doing something very important. Attacking the knight on f6, a knight that doesn't have any good squares to retreat to. First of all, you should know that retreating to e4, which seems like a totally natural move since it brings the knight to the center, is actually already a losing move. Why? Because this knight is left with no escape after the move queen to e2. As you can see, it can't go here because of the pawn. Here, there's the bishop. These two squares are covered by our pawn, and it can't go back to this spot, even though it's defended by the queen. Why? Because it's attacked by both the bishop and the knight. That's why I can't jump to a5. And most people decide to place their knight on this square here, knight to g4. It seems like a much better move, but I'm telling you right now, we're going to punish it in a really powerful way. First of all, what are they doing to us? They're attacking this pawn with two pieces. A lot of you might think here, well, I'll just defend it. With simply rook to e1, which seems like an extremely strong move, don't fall into the trap of kicking out this knight because they could capture it, even though we would have different traps afterwards, right? Here, there is already an extremely strong move. And it's the classic one where this knight is placed on the same diagonal as the queen and this other knight is undefended. The brutal bishop sacrifice would come. Bishop takes on f7, luring the king to capture the bishop. We've seen this in tons of openings. What's the trick? That when this bishop is captured, the knight can now jump in with check, and on the next move we can capture this loose knight. It really doesn't matter where this king goes, because we'll be able to capture without any problem. Right now, we don't have any pawn or piece advantage. What we've achieved is simply an extremely superior position compared to our opponent, since this king won't be able to castle and is completely exposed. Normally, I would stop here and just show you this variation, but what I'm going to do is show you how to win it, because it's extremely simple. For example, here's a move you need to keep in mind. What happens if they capture this pawn here? Suddenly, you're down a pawn, and not only that, but it also attacks the queen, tries to give the king a bit of defense, And if we move the queen far away, they'll take this knight at some point in the future if this bishop disappears, right? This doesn't seem so clear anymore. Well, it's actually very simple to win in these situations. All you have to do is place the queen on e4, attacking this knight. But the idea isn't really about the knight. It's to slip in through this square here, and we're simply going to win the game. We're threatening checkmate. Do you see it? It seems like there's no problem at all because this knight is here. So at this point, the black pieces can play whatever they want. However, what we're going to do on the next move is threaten the knight with the pawn and simply win the game here because there will be no way to defend the knight and the checkmate. Remember this well, we're going to play d4, the gambit we're looking at. They capture with the pawn, which is by far the most common move, and now what do? Well, we advance our pawn since they've left us a clear path. We've just seen how to punish the knight's jump to e4, and we've also seen how to punish the jump to g4. Some people say, well, I'll just pull back. This knight goes back to its original square, and at worst, I develop it through e7. Well, this can be punished in a very strong way, with a variation similar to the Fagatello attack. As you can see, we'll play knight to g5, directly attacking this f7 square with both the bishop and the knight. For now, it's very easy to stop. The move d5 wouldn't work to stop it. This bishop, which we would capture en passant, and again the threat would remain. And besides, we'd be opening the file for the rook, so d5 does not work. The only move that seems to stop this attack is knight to h6. Alright, taking the pawn with the knight wouldn't work either. Why? Because we would simply play f4 and rook to e1, and we'd be in the same situation, right? This knight would have to move, and we would come in again through this point. That's why here the move that works is knight to h6. But don't worry, because here we have a move that's very strong and very subtle. It's rook to e1. It seems like we're not threatening anything. Chess teacher, what are you doing? If you're not threatening anything here, well, actually, you are threatening a lot, because here black can't do anything. Actually, no matter what they do, they're going to lose. And that's wonderful, by the way. First of all, how can they defend against this? They can't, because if they try to develop this bishop with the d-pawn, whether to d6 or d5, we would simply capture it, for example, here en passant. And we'd be giving a discovered check. They couldn't block with the bishop because we have 3 pieces attacking, so there's not much they can do here. And every time I've reached this position, what they've done is castle. All right. Mistake. Another mistake. Why? Because we can punish it in a very simple way. As you can see, black's pieces are a bit uncoordinated, especially this knight on h6. Thanks to having it there, we can start attacking with a lot of force. We have a queen and a knight aiming directly at the checkmate square. There's no other way to stop it than to play g6, right? There's no other move. Once they play g6, it's true they've blocked the checkmate, but they've created weaknesses. Whenever an enemy pawn from the castling side moves, it creates weak squares. In this case, what's on a weak square? A knight? Perfect. I'm going to attack it. You can watch the video as many times as you need, okay? Here you're going to understand not just the moves, but also concepts you can apply in all your games. We attack this knight, but don't worry, because this knight can't move. If it does move, we would simply deliver checkmate. Do you see it? So this knight can't be moved. If it can't move, what should they do? Well, the only option is to defend it with the king. That's what I like, when they only have one possible move, because then I already know what I should play. Since I already know what my opponent will play, I know how I'm going to continue. And here there's an absolutely spectacular move that gives me goosebumps. If you want, you can pause the video to try to find it, because I'm about to reveal it right now. The epic and winning move is to sacrifice the queen for the knight. Queen takes h6, a brutal queen sacrifice. First, it has to be accepted, because if the king decides to move, we would capture on h7 and deliver mate. So it must be accepted. And now what do? Down a queen, chess teacher? Well, now comes the definitive fork. With knight takes f7, check, and I'm going to take the queen. Come on, chess teacher, you're losing your mind. The knight can be taken with the rook. No, because the check isn't just from the knight, but also from the bishop. Thanks to the knight's jump, we deliver a double check. The only way to get out of a double check is to move the king. And when the king moves, we could capture the queen. But since you all are like me, what do you want? To win as quickly as possible, there's actually an even stronger move here. Bishop to h6, check. Why can we afford this luxury of playing bishop to h6, check? Because now the king can't capture the knight since it's protected by the bishop, and he can't go to 8-8 because that's covered by the knight. So once again, we have a forced move, this one here, and as you can see, everything lines up perfectly again, and the king ends up in the middle of another pin. You're loving this, aren't you? I am too. This line is amazing. Queen takes knight. Said, so what should they do? Well, they have to move the king again. And when they move the king, not only have we won all of this, but we can also capture the rook. Here, if they take the knight, which is a bad move, we capture the bishop. The good move here is to capture the bishop, but even so, we're still way better off. We're going to recapture this knight, and no matter how much they recapture, as you can see, not only do we have a completely free rook as an advantage, but we also have this passed pawn that's going to be an absolute nightmare for our opponents. A very simple plan I always use is to play knight to d2, rook to d2, and rook to d1 to double the rooks on this point, and thanks to this passed pawn, end up winning the game without any problem. Once we play e5, threatening this knight, there's the move d5, which is dangerous. It's an interesting move because it says, fine, I'm not going to let this knight disappear, but while you threaten it, I threaten your bishop. It's a move that makes sense, but it's dangerous for the black pieces. So what are we going to do if they play this against us? Well, it's very simple. We're going to take the bait. Forced moves, which are the ones I like. If we take the knight, the only move they have to avoid losing material is to take the bishop. So now we're getting into a forced sequence. We keep going with forced moves, which I love. Pawn takes pawn. In this case, we threaten the rook, and the only square it has is to place it right in front of the pawn, which is why we keep going with the forced moves. Here, rook to e1, check. They have to block, and we're in a wonderful position for us. I recommend you continue with this move here, bishop to g5. It's a move that has allowed me to win most of my games playing this variation. Why? Because here, I admit that most people play queen to d5 against me, which looks pretty aggressive, but it's not that good if you know how to punish it. All right, here it looks like black isn't doing so badly, right? They have a centralized queen that can't be easily attacked. They're well defended. They're about to kick out our bishop. They're going to capture this pawn. But here we have a wonderful move, and this move is pretty hard to find if you haven't seen the video. It's knight to c3, a double exclamation mark move. First of all, if the queen is well defended, why are we giving away the knight? This knight can't be taken because after queen takes queen, in fact, we win their queen. This bishop is pinned by the rook, so it can't recapture. So in this case, if they take the knight, they've lost their queen. But still, are they really going to want to move the queen instead of taking this knight? I get it. But we're going to keep up the pressure. As Morphy used to say, and you all know this, help your pieces and they will help you. And that's absolutely true, my friends. We're going to play knight to f4. We're going to centralize our knight in such a way that we create different threats. Among them, taking this bishop, and even stronger, the main one, right? Knight to f6 check, and then taking the rook. Obviously, the king can't move away to avoid this. He can't go here, there's the bishop here, and it would be the same over here because we'd simply give a 4. So they have to move the rook, and the rook can only move here. And so, as you can see, once again, forced moves, I love it. But here comes the nightmare of knights for our opponent. Pay attention to this move. Knight to h4, and this queen is already starting to tremble. Let's take a look at this because it's spectacular. They can't retreat to f6 because we'd capture it. They can't retreat to g6 either because we'd capture it. Same goes for the queen move. e5, it seems like no one is attacking it, but we would simply play knight to f6 check, and with the discovered attack, we'd capture the queen. The same thing would happen if the queen comes back to d5, because we would simply play knight to f6 check and we'd take the queen as well. You see it, right? And it seems like now there are no more squares left for the queen to retreat to. All that's left is to look for a queen exchange, which in this case we won't do, but instead we'll play again. Knight to f6 check and we take the queen. So here, with this nightmare of the knights, wherever the queen goes, she's going to end up being lost, either by a direct capture or by a double check. Chess teacher, I see now that if they take this pawn with the pawn, they're going to end up suffering a lot. But you yourself told me that the correct move for black was to capture this pawn with the bishop. Yes, this is the correct line. However, I'm going to show you a way that has always worked for me whenever they've captured with the bishop to win in a beautiful way, and you're going to love it. The first thing you need to know is that when they capture with the bishop, you want to exchange. Thank you. This knight for the bishop so that we gain the bishop pair. What advantage does this line give black? They keep this pawn on e5, so now we can't advance to attack this knight. However, we have a move here that I absolutely love, and it's this one right here. It sets up a ton of threats, and black has to be extremely careful. The main threat now is to play f4, threatening the capture here. Once we capture here and threaten this pinned knight, since this pawn is gone, we also attack the knight that was supported by this pawn. So they have to be very careful and hurry a bit to drive this knight out. Black would like us to capture this knight with the bishop so their problems would be over. But of course what we're going to do is keep the strong pin we have on the f6 square. Alright, here if black keeps doing anything else, we're going to be able to launch our f4 attack and capture here. We open up the rook, we attack here, we attack there. So what should they do? Well, pretty much the only way they have to break this pin is the move g5. And here, my friends, comes one of the most beautiful moves in this video. Even though we've already seen a few, this one might just be the best. f4 in this position is devastating. Come on, chess teacher, don't give me that nonsense. What are you doing? First, this bishop can't be captured, because if it is, the position is a disaster for black. F takes e5, and now we're threatening this knight with two pieces, and we're also threatening this knight with the queen. So this position collapses under its own weight. There's no way to defend, because if this knight moves, we're also threatening the f7 square with the rook and bishop. This is a complete disaster, which is why this bishop can't be recaptured. That said, they can try to solidify their position. They can't take with this pawn because they'd leave the knight hanging. So they have to try to capture the piece with this pawn here, so now they have a total of 2 extra pawns. And now comes another one of those beautiful moves we have in this position. I'm absolutely sure you're going to love it. A rook sacrifice for a pawn. Not only are we down 2 pawns, but now we sacrifice the rook with the brilliant move, double exclamation mark. Why is this move so good? Because now this pawn stops defending the knight, we capture the knight, and this position just falls apart from every angle. You see it, right? We're attacking this knight with 2 pieces, and it's only defended by 1. It can't even move away because we'd capture the queen, and it can't be defended because there's no piece that can protect this knight. If they try to bring the king, bishop takes, and we'll win the queen as well. So here, well, what they can do is at least try to castle to give the queen an escape route, but then we simply finish in a beautiful and elegant way. Bishop takes knight, threatening the queen. It's true, now the queen can escape, but here we're about to deliver checkmate very soon. If you want, as always, you can pause the video to try to figure out how to deliver this checkmate and do the exercise here with me. If not, I'm going to give you the solution right now because it's beautiful. Here, the way to deliver an unavoidable mate is this one right here. Bishop to h8, and there's no way to prevent the queen from coming in through g7 to deliver checkmate on the next move. They could move this pawn, but they can't because it's pinned by this bishop, so no matter what they do, we'll simply checkmate with queen to g7, a beautiful variation. What happens if, when we capture here and play this tremendous move pinning the knight, instead of playing a6, they let us play f4, for example, they castle, and as I was saying, they ignore our threat to play f4. Well, don't worry, because here you're going to win in a simple way. We're threatening over here and now capturing this knight, so they don't have many options either, right? What seems like the most normal move in the world here? Well, it simply seems like playing d6 to defend this point. In this case, what we could do is just go ahead and capture this pawn, which would open the file for r. rook. In fact, what we're going to do here is, instead of recapturing, first bring the knight to c3 because it's going to be a weapon that's going to help us a lot. This knight wants to jump over here. Do you see it? Since nothing is threatening us, we can afford to bring the knight in. If they were to play a silly move now, for example, this one here, we could already jump in and land this really strong pin, right? But here, black can still play with initiative by kicking out our bishop. And what are we going to do? Retreat it? No. Recapture, sorry. The pawn went crazy, recapture this east 5 square. And here we ask our opponent, you can do two things, and with both, you're going to lose. That is, if here, for example, they say, well, I'll capture your bishop, I'll capture the knight, and not only that, but by capturing this knight, I also threaten this other knight, I threaten this g7 square attacking the rook, and that's going to be very bad. So what they have to do is capture with the pawn. And once they capture with the pawn, what we're simply going to do is, instead of retreating, take advantage of the fact that we've opened up the rook to capture this knight. So what's happening here? They can't capture with the queen because it's defended. They have to capture with the pawn. And once this king is so exposed, the right way to finish is with this move here, queen to h5, and this will be over soon. How to defend this pawn? Bring the king over, and now we come in with the knight. We could attack here with two pieces, or my favorite finish is right here. This pawn is completely free, and really here, no matter what they do, we're basically going to end up almost giving checkmate. Why? Because here, let's suppose they come in with the queen, we simply go in, and when the king moves away, boom, boom. We'll capture here and this king is completely trapped, checkmate. The correct way for black to play is, when we pin this knight, to play the calm move d6. This is the correct way, and I'll explain how you should continue, because it's super important to know what to do if your opponent plays well. It's very simple. Just try to reason through your thoughts. For example, what's our plan? To play f4, right? When we play f4, the idea isn't to capture here or to play a6, because we've already seen that all of that gets punished. The correct move is to bring the bishop to e6. Let's approach this logically. If we capture this bishop now, we would simply open up this file for the opponent's castling, and this pawn would be blocking important squares, so we're not going to recapture. Let's use logic. We want to activate our pieces by defending this bishop, and we'll do that with the knight. So there are two options, knight to d2 and knight to a3. Let me explain. If we keep applying logic, which is what you should always do, you'll choose knight to a3. Why? Because knight to d2 would block the queen from the knight's attack. Therefore, knight to a3, and even if they capture here, we could recapture with the knight, putting pressure on the d5 square, which we could open up here and attack this point. And even though black is doing very well, our position is by no means inferior. So I hope you can put this video into practice. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, save it so you can watch it as many times as you need, and as always, we'll see each other in the next video, friends. Goodbye.